Ayo, what a piece. We got a new title design. We got some new CM Punk news. It's the same old nonsense. Different day. I'm Avi Devin here to gab about it. How y'all doing? I myself have been mostly vibing out on this Saturday afternoon. It's been a very rainy afternoon in my area, so it's kind of just kept the mood mellow. But it has been a good one regardless. Hope y'all been doing well. I personally have enjoyed wrestling this last week. It's been a great fallout from Double or Nothing. They've really started to put pieces in place for AEW to move forward in the next direction, more so to Forbidden Door than to All In, but that's honestly to be expected, and it's probably for the best at that. Because, well, that's going to be featuring AEW talent. It's going to be canon to AEW's content. It's not going to be a Survivor Series type of deal, even though it kind of is. Is really all a matter of how much merit is put into the booking and how much they are going to take a left turn off of their. They're going to veer away from their current programs rather. And over on the WB side, we got that new but same title design. Oh boy, isn't it great? Don't y'all love how it's yellow in the background now? Isn't it great? Isn't it? It's just like black leather. Like I've seen this literal design in community creations in 2K games throughout the years. And single time somebody's unified their women's belts or unified the world title, you will see a variation of it. It's just that big old W, black leather, gold background. Went to the pool. How was your Saturday? Dope. Shout out to you. I wish I could have gone to the pool today. It's a very rainy day for the majority of the afternoon. It perked up a bit. It yeah, it started to perk up a bit here towards the end, but like not towards the end, but more towards this moment. Like it looks like the sun's starting to creep out now, but it's been pretty murky, all things considered, right now. So yeah, so how are we feeling about that title belt? Because I've actually seen some people standing up for it. I've seen some people being like, "This is a good thing," and I can't really call it a bad thing. It's a lateral move at worst. You can't say it's actively a downgrade, you know, but this now does just bring up the question once more. I saw the title, a 7 out of 10. 7, you see, that's exactly like, I guess that's a good way. If 7 out of 10 is average by those standards, then yeah, absolutely 7 out of 10, because it's just the same belt with recolor scheme. And it begs the question, title lineage. What's the deal here? Does this championship represent the lineage of both belts? Does it represent the lineage of only a universal title? Because surely it doesn't represent only the WWE Championship. Is the Universal title is the one that Roman's held longer, and that's the one that you need to keep active for the sake of validating this 1,000+ day reign. Otherwise, you have to acknowledge that it became a new championship reign halfway through, and you could still, word salad that to make an accurate statement out of it and promote it as an accolade. But it's just at that point, it's so much more contrived than just simply 1,000-day run as champion. I'm sorry, I'm confused as to what you're referring to, Austin. Oh, if you're not able to watch tomorrow, don't worry. The VOD is always going to be there. And the Ultimate Warrior yellow title. Yeah, it does kind of, the yellow behind that title does kind of remind me of the Ultimate Warrior Championship. How you doing, Dar? Nice to see you swinging by. Hope you're doing good. Hope your weekend's been nice to you thus far. Do you say that? Yeah, that's exactly it, Jimmy. Like that title, it looks more like a championship. Yes, you can get mad about the branding, the logo smacked on the front of it, all you want. Totally understand that. But this isn't something to be like upset about. My hashtag's not coming there. Oh well, it's not there. Bumblebee from Transformers. Yeah, it did kind of have that color scheme. So, and the thing is, right? Why couldn't they have just kept it to what? Why couldn't they have just gone with a new design? One that represents what they're trying to go for more accurately. I don't see the. At that point, you could have just discarded one of the belts and been better off. Sorry, I needed to attend to some notifications. Well, yeah. How can you justify not like, how can you justify giving a new color skin when you can literally just discard one of those belts and change the text on it and not have to make this whole ceremony out of it and make that as a talking point? Yeah, Dara, I wish we got a better design too. This takes me right back to the Universal title unveiling when it was like, oh, we're gonna get, at least we'll get a different design, because the Women's Championship kind of reflects this title, so maybe we'll get a new title design for the men and women's title on this. Nope, it's just gonna be a W with a red leather instead of a blue. Well, I'm sorry, instead of a black. And then when it just drafted to SmackDown, you just changed the color of the strap. You see, I don't know about that, Jimmy, because the whole issue with the Universal title is just that. When it got drafted, a brand, it used to be red for Raw, and they had to make it be blue for SmackDown. I've never really been a fan of colored straps indicating the championship. We're kind of in a bit of a pickle now with the women's championships because of a very similar situation. Maybe not the color of the straps, but the color of the background of the title. They represent a specific brand because the color is automatically associated with the brand. When you don't have that automatic color association, the belts being drafted, the champions being drafted, feels much more realistic. Whereas in previous years, like this whole Bianca and Asuka situation, well, not Bianca and Asuka, but this whole Bianca and Rhea situation. The big question is, are they going to trade belts? Are they going to change the belts' names? You wouldn't have to ask those questions if the titles inherently didn't represent a brand, as opposed to just represented a weight class, a region, something along those lines. Universal title blue for background strap. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not, too popular for that opinion, and I'm fine with that. But I like colored straps. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying all championships should only have a black strap. But I feel like the color of a strap shouldn't be dictated by something. It should just be a part of the design. Which is weird, because I'm normally someone who really advocates for like motivation behind decisions, whether it comes to design or whatever. So now, that I guess works a little bit better, Jimmy, but again, that just comes back to, like, don't make this hoopla about a new title design when it's not a new title design. It's a recoloring of a title, And I suppose if it's just the next step in Roman's character, okay, then whatever. I guess that if it's like more a part of the character than it is an actual design decision, then I get that. But I'm pretty sure whoever Roman drops the title to is going to be holding that championship. And that's where my gripe lays. Because, like, you look to Edge with his custom spinner title. You look to Miz with the M. You look to the Smoking Skull or the Brahma Bull titles. And those were titles motivated by a character and a story. Title designs, rather, motivated by a character and a story, rather than just, this is the company's championship moving forward. That's what I was wondering, Dara, because you still saw Paul Heyman walking with those championships. Is Paul Heyman going to walk around with those two titles while Roman carries his official one? Because that's not the worst decision, but at the same time, that's so confusing when you literally have 4 world championship belts being held across 2 men, even if only 2 of them are sanctioned championships. Next, the NXT OG title for an idea, or what do you mean? You're saying, like, the title design for the NXT title? Or are you like inferring a new championship be made? I'm going to take a gander at WWE.com because I want to see, like we saw last week, how the tag team titles and the world titles were listed separately. I want to see if our championships are... Roman Reigns is still listed twice. Once each as the Universal Champion and WWE Champion. Now, of course, WWE.com is selectively updated, so this may just be behind, but they have Seth in here as the World Heavyweight Champion, even though they don't have a picture of him with the title, which is weird. They've gotten pictures of him with the title already. And then you have Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, both in here listed once each as the Raw and SmackDown Tag Team Champions collectively. It's supposed to just listed once as the Undisputed Tag Team Champions. So they're doing this weird thing whereby by the standards of their lineage, they are separate championships, but promoted on television, they are one. And that's the worst of both worlds. That's full on cannot make up our mind, so we're just going to do our damnedest to have our cake and eat it too. And it's irksome. To a stats guy like me, it's irksome, to say the least. Because let's fast forward 2 years, right? Roman's dropped the title to somebody, say Cody. Cody's dropped the title to somebody, say Gunther, and so on and so forth. We've had several champions since then. How is the championship lineage going to be recognized? Will the Universal and WWE Championship both have the same person listed through each lineage, having won the title on the same day or not? Because then statistically, that means each time a title change happens, that person is winning 2 world championships at once. Like, the more I try to think about it, the more my head hurts because the less sense it makes. I like the OG NXT one also. Who do you oh, you're saying when it was just literally NXT was the plate? There was nothing else to it? Oh shit, Emma and Riddick Ross have gotten married. Congratulations to them. Also, hello, Chris. How goes it? Hope your birthday was good yesterday, fam. To those who did not know, Chris Leclerc here in the chat came into the chat yesterday. Let us know it was his birthday. So if you didn't already, wish him a belated birthday. But yeah, that was a nice title design. I'd agree, Austin. I think CM Punk could be coming after MJF, Adam Cole, Chris. CM Punk coming to the company, I think this is going to be a case of people coming for him. I think that's going to be the story they're going to tell, is that people are just going to try and pick bones with him. Because there's 2 rumored programs, and I'll get into them a little bit more, but it's looking like Samoa Joe and most recently reported Jay White are in the lines. Nice, Chris. Good on you, fam. Get all the things you want. So yes, but back to not veer too off of topic at the moment, as we're here on the WWE Championships side of things, they need to decide on, and this has been a talking point for months at this point, you know, ever since pretty much WrestleMania. I feel like this has been a major talking point. It's kind of been a talking point since the 2 titles were unified at WrestleMania 38. But it's only really become this major dispute across, like, the podcast world, at least as so far as I've seen these last couple of months, because it's like, especially with the introduction of this world heavyweight title, is like, eventually you're going to have to do something. I think Money in the Bank, July 1st. Yes, it is July 1st. And June is actually a light month for pay-per-views and PLEs, not in the American wrestling scene. Trying to not lose my train of thought here. I feel like once Roman drops these titles, he'll be recognized as the last Universal Champion. I feel like what they will do is they will slowly, if not, they will either slowly or very abruptly just start referring to it as the WWE Championship again. And they will say that the Universal title's lineage ends with Roman Reigns, you know? And that's where, oh, you don't know Austin. I guess that'll be another talking point we'll get into. I feel like that was a little bit more common knowledge across the AEW fan base by now. So, I'm thinking that the Universal title, the word Universal specifically, is only in the championship now to represent Roman Reigns, because the title is kind of become more a part of his character than it is actually a part of the championship. It is probably just going to be the WWE Championship come time he drop it. At the very least, I'd hope. That's the most sense they can make of it without having officially ended the lineage of the WWE Championship, which dates back to the 60s. So, yeah. We'll see how that whole situation plays out over time. One thing's for certain. We are looking at a situation where we both simultaneously have 2 and 3 world championships in WWE, and it looks like they're being intentionally vague and contradicting to themselves for the sake of that. So we'll move over topics. Now, I suppose we'll start off with the AEW brand split, because that will lead us to the CM Punk discussions. Because here's the thing, right? A lot of the things I'm discussing on this podcast, this is not me breaking news. I'm effectively aggregating news that has been discussed by at least several sources now, you know. And that's not me trying to downplay myself, but I've just come to realize the audience of WatchaMania isn't as in tune with that scene as I thought they were. So I can help transition some of that news down the pipeline, if you will. So AEW is looking to have a bit of a brand split. That's what Collision's going to be purposed to. Now, there's this big misconception that Collision was created for CM Punk. No. Collision has been purposed in a way for CM Punk. Collision goes back to being something that Warner Brothers Discovery wanted out of AEW. They said, we want more content. So Collision has been purposed for that. We have Collision coming up in later on this month, and it's effectively going to serve as a separate brand for AEW of sorts. It's come to learn through news reports and such. It's been going back and forth on whether or not there's going to be a soft brand split or a hard brand split in terms of who will be featured on what show and how exclusive they will be to those shows. So it's going to be a situation where... Sorry, I'm getting distracted because I'm trying to stay focused here. I'm seeing chat, but I'll address all that in a bit. So with the brand, so this supposed brand split is going to be coming into play partially because there's a lot of people in the company who were very much against CM Punk coming back. Specifically, were very anti-CM Punk after the whole Brawl Out situation and the scrum last fall at All Out. Now, it's worth noting, people are more upset about what he had to say at the scrum than the brawl itself. Fights happen in pro wrestling all the time like that. It's a matter of their top guy getting on a podium like that right after winning the world championship and running the company down. And that's where a lot of people stand. There's a point where people said if CM Punk ever returned, they'd walk out. Now, CM Punk's return has been officially announced. A lot of people in the company have learned this through the announcement. There's no talks of walking out right now. There's no real talks of walkouts. So has definitely simmered down in some regard. But it seems like Collision's being purposed because for those people who don't want to work with Punk, they'll be sticking over on the Dynamite side of things. Collision is going to be featuring more Punk. Now this is going to be a soft brand split in the sense that there's going to be some draft, as far as we're aware, that's going to delegate these brands to one another. Hold on 1 second. Check something. Okay. So there's no real draft or anything that's delegating. Why is it not saving? Okay. That's particularly delegating these rosters to one or another. But it does seem like Collision is going to have much more of the non-AEW originals on it. You know, you'll have your Miro, your Andrade, you've seen House of Black advertised for it. The exception to this, in most cases, being the champions. Now, you see Hobbs and stuff on the poster. So, we don't know where that's... But Hobbs is also somebody that Punk has spoken up about working with, and apparently Hobbs has had no real issue with Punk. And... Sorry, again, seeing the messages, but I'm trying to really complete this thought. So, with the brand split, it's looking like it's going to be more AEW originals focused on Dynamite, and it's going to be more of like non-originals, other stars, international stars even featured on Collision. Collision, in that regard, is going to be kind of serving the purpose of AEW's Nitro, and that's where CM Punk was going to be prominently featured on it, kind of for that reason. Well, not to partially serve that purpose, I should say. I'm sorry. So many things pulling my attention. I'm trying desperately to keep my attention span together. ADHD is a challenge, to say the least. And now the exception to this rule, it's looking like Champions and a few others will probably float these brands. And as far as I'm aware, us as the viewers will not be seeing these shows as different brands, you know. you will most often see one person on one show or the other. But champions, Punk every now and then might pop up on Dynamite. You say like a Will Hobbs every now and then pop up on Collision or Jay White, something like that. That's kind of the dynamic they're looking to have. Your champions, they will float. Now, where that puts our current champions once they lose said championship, not sure. MJF, once he loses the title, is he a Dynamite guy or a Collision guy? Not sure. They'll probably cross that bridge when they come to it, see what works out best. But this is not going to be a Raw and SmackDown situation. We're not going to be in a position watching AEW being like, hey, this guy isn't supposed to be on Dynamite, he's a Collision guy. Or, what is this Collision dude doing on Rampage? No. And as terms of like live events wise, Rampage will be sticking with Dynamite. It will be filmed after, maybe before Dynamite in some instances, Ring of Honor. It will probably be a hybrid of those tapings we see in the studio in Universal Studios with tapings at Collision shows, whereas Ring of Honor will be touring with Collision, it's looking like. And I think, because there's nothing I've seen that indicates this directly, but I think the name Collision is meant to imply AEW colliding with the outside wrestling sphere, including Ring of Honor, most notably, because you'll see Ring of Honor popping up on it, like, extensively, probably, as that leads us to the CM Punk news. Who might he be feuding with? Well, one of the earliest reports said he would like to do a program with Joe. Joe, our current Ring of Honor World Television Champion. So, if he comes over before losing that title, then he will indefinitely be representing Ring of Honor in this feud. And if he doesn't... Hey, Hassan, how you doing? And if he doesn't have the title come that point, will he still be representing Ring of Honor? Because Joe was always brought in to be a Ring of Honor guy. So it's tough to say one way or the other. And another name that has been floated most recently, as recent as yesterday, even Fightful Select reported that CM Punk is looking at Jay White's work and seeing that he'd like to work a program with him. It's a very weird way of putting it. Doing okay, Hassan. I'm very scatterbrained at the moment, but I'm doing my best to keep myself on the tracks. So it's like about a Saturday Night Heat or recap. Oh, no, not at all. Collision is going to, if anything, Collision has the potential to be a bigger show than Dynamite. And don't worry, I'm going to get back to what was said earlier in chat in regards to the Heat. Rampage is going to serve more so as AEW's Sunday Night Heat program, whereas Collision is somewhat serving as a different brand than Dynamite. We're looking like we're going to be getting different programs on each night. We're looking like Dynamite is going to be our tried and true to AEW program, whereas Collision is going to be more so representing the more the more story based elements of pro wrestling. At least that's my guesstimation, based on the stars they're putting on the program, who they want to get involved in creative, and all of the points that I've made prior. So Collision has the chance to be just as big, if not bigger, than Dynamite. The only issue with it is the night it's on, but but even that's not as much of an issue as most people make it out to be. Because if people want to watch it, they're going to watch it. If people want to watch it live, they're going to watch it live, The only people who are making a big deal out of it are going to be the people who will go out of their way to not watch it live for the sake of saying that it wasn't worth watching live. You know what I mean? And that's just assuming that those people even care enough to watch it at all at that point. I think the AEW fan base is going to follow through and consume this content come time, They always do in one way or another. Now, I mentioned a moment ago, the AEW OGs. Now, the Elite will probably be hanging out much more often on Dynamite, because what's looking like, at least based on reports, the last there was anything said officially about Punk and his beef with anybody in AEW was his beef with Jericho. And Jericho recently tweeted out, well, not recently, but not long after that, tweeted out, I'm never working with that guy. Part of me think that Jericho's got his working boots on. He's willing to do business with Punk. The Elite, however, there's been nothing said on that front in any regard. And not for nothing, that's not something you want getting out, if that would be your top tier main program, you don't want it to leak that is going to be the thing. If the whole thing is they're not going to work together, you don't want it to then be found out that they're willing to work together. That kind of diminishes part of the interest that would be in that feud, because it'd be like they're treading on forbidden territory in just addressing it, should it ever come up. So I hold out hope that there will be a program to work all of this out in some way, shape, or form. But the expectation is Dynamite's going to be Elite territory, Collision's going to be Punk territory, for a lack of a better way of putting it. And so Elite, it's not looking like they're going to be involved with CM Punk in the immediate future, to say the least. And like I've seen people speculate, sometimes because this soft brand split, nobody's sticking to just one show. Maybe some weeks you'll see CM Punk on Dynamite. Those weeks you probably won't see the Elite on Dynamite. If anything, that might be the week they pop up on Collision, and so on and so forth. But the big concern with that, and that's why I'm cautiously optimistic about it, because I hope it doesn't turn out this way, is this is incredibly petty if this is the reasons that this brand split will be established to any degree, either internally or externally. It's ridiculous. SmackDown. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not following any of that. So, that completely threw me off. So I hope that there's more to this brand split than that. I hope that maybe this brand split isn't anywhere near as noticeable as before. Maybe this will just be purely for the sake of delegating TV time to those who deserve it, And time will tell if they actually do end up working together, but I'm not too certain that'll happen. That's why I'm just hoping that this brand split plays out the way they want it to. This results in minimal issues behind the scenes for the company, so they can move forward with the vision that they set forth. So that's something a lot of people don't consider, is when AEW first launched in 2019, there was a very specific vision in mind, a very long-term plan for the company as a whole in mind, leading forward, and it is drastically altered. It is drastically veered from that course because more people have gotten on board and less of those people are willing to see that vision. So it's becoming a much less unified front than it was in 2020 and 2021. Ironically, that unified front that Punk has gone on record to say what led him to be willing to come back through AEW was how unified of an environment that it was. So how ironic it is that he, stepping into this environment, is dividing it so much with just his presence alone. What do you think is the next move for AEW for shows or return to debuts? Now, that's a very vague question, so I'm not entirely sure how to interpret it. I'm just going to go with my gut on that. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is where they get back into having a long-term plan and sticking to it. And that's something that AEW's kind of always had, even now, but much less than they did in the beginning. Kind of to my previous point, I see AEW really... I see AEW really becoming a more focused product with these two separate shows that they can delineate attention across properly. It's really just a matter of luck and commitment. How much are they going to commit to that plan, and how much is bad luck going to get in the way? Injuries, outside situations, whatever the case may be. Because, let's not forget that AEW was barely a year old when a global pandemic struck and put it in a position of having to thrive off the bare minimum. So one can only hope that this... Ooh, wow, that came in really bad. Apologies, y'all. But yeah, it's only a matter of time until I think the company develops a much greater focus Now, again, this whole situation can blow up, right? Punk can show up backstage, can get into a fight with somebody, they're crossing paths, another blow up happen. And there has been legal action taken by AEW to make sure that CM Punk doesn't, outright like slander the company again, at least without legal repercussion. So there is that, little safety net that they've put in place for themselves. Well, I'm not sure. That's usually how that works, Austin. I'm actually in the middle of drinking a coffee myself. I haven't drank much of it, but you can tell I'm a little bit wired. Now, in terms of like returns or debuts, I think they're going to try and hold off on the signing. They've done more than enough signing as of late. If they're going to sign, I think it is going to be for Ring of Honor as opposed to AEW. But that is also something to consider. We have 4 shows across 2 promotions now to delineate talent across, at least under the Tony Khan umbrella. So you want to bring in new people. There will probably be room for them. But the thing about that is pro wrestling has conditioned us to believe, if a top star comes into a company, then they must skyrocket to the top of it to fit into that position that they so clearly deserve to be in. I saw it a lot with Keith Lee's debut in AEW last year. They're like, why is he not in the world title program? Barely 2 months into his story. Like, chill. He's got this whole character arc with Swerve, which admittedly has been dragging its feet because of poor booking decisions, I would say. And I'll get into that in a second when I clarify what I mean by that. But nonetheless, it's telling a story, man. They have a whole career here in this company to do what you want them to. Ooh, neck. That was not the best crack. And, and there's so many others, like Jay White, for example. He's in here and they're like, wow, he's really just been slotted into this feud with Ricky Starks. Well, yeah. Ricky Starks is a big name, Losing to him isn't going to hurt Jay White's credibility. And not for nothing, you're still introducing them to a new audience, no matter how much the hardcores know him. These casual AEW fans tuning in, they're going to be like, oh, hey, that was the guy who was Japan's champion last year. And that's all they'll know Jay White for. You got to fully introduce him. And yes, if that puts some people in being like, oh, he's just palling around with this guy, then yeah. Ring of Honor after Random thought, but that's not a bad shout, Austin. Bobby Fish is going to return. I don't know. I think he's really burned his bridges with Tony Khan. He's really shat on him on AEW in so many ways. I don't think that it's. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, just I don't think it's working out for. I don't think it's working out for him in that regard. He's barely even an Impact right now. I don't think he's gonna be brought back to the company, especially if they're more willing to bring in like Sabu for a cameo than to bring him in for that unsanctioned match. So move back a bit. Again, I feel like I veered too far off course of what I was trying to get at. Oh well, I've lost it. But yeah, I'm thinking the AEW is gonna be able to get itself on course so long as it just kind of stays in its lane, and nobody really tries to cause a ruckus over anything in particular. What else could I go over here? There was something I had on the tip of my tongue, but now it's escaping me. What's going on around me? Apologies for the dead air, y'all. It's completely escaped me after that sad one. But yeah, oh yeah, returns, debuts, stuff. Yeah, so I think that it needs to I think it needs to remain a more integral focus of AEW to stay focused on itself and trying to bring in more pieces because what's caused a lot of their issues, ironically, has been bringing in all these pieces, and that's been one of the biggest criticisms for the longest time, and one of the criticisms that I fought back against as a fan, but I've come to see that it was indeed there was eventually a point that it was too much. What that point was, I'm not quite sure. But I do remember back at All Out 2021 being like, this company's got everything it needs to hit the next level. And something veered off course there. Something happened to change all that up. And, it's hard to not, revolve that around CM Punk in some way. Okay, we're jumping topics again here. I'm probably going to in the future try and put a topic up on the screen or something to try and keep things a little bit more focused. Because if nothing else but for myself, because I get distracted way too easily. So a non-topic message will completely throw off my chain of thought. But we've spoken enough about CM Punk in regards to I think about Heyman turning on. Wait. Turning on okay, what do you think about Jay turning on Jimmy is simply over Roman? I'm thinking something like that will happen. So an English translation of what you oh, that's nice, Cam. Also, hey, what's up? How goes it? Nice to see you, fam. Oh, really quick, y'all, if you haven't done so, please drop a thumbs up on this video. It'd be greatly appreciated. Really help get us a boost going, help people see the video, as this is not typically what this channel is used for, so YouTube gets confused in trying to promote that. But yeah, we've classified a few things this evening. If you're just now tuning in, do feel free to check out the VOD for discussions about the new title designs, title lineage in WWE, and of course, brand split and CM Punk's role in it. Fair, Austin, fair. I think Jay is going to side with Roman, at least for a little bit. It feels like he has been, there's so much depth to it that I feel like they're trying to not ever directly address, but this is abuse 101, right? The whole fall in line thing, that was a real direct way of putting it, to say the least, because you think back to their feud, and he's literally tore this man down physically and then tore this man down mentally before he finally fell in line. And ever since then, Jay's been the hardest one to stick to it. The closest he was to turning was Elimination Chamber, it seems, and then the whole situation went awry. Sammy accidentally hit Jimmy, and then he just decided to side with his brother. And now Jay's motivation behind turning on Sammy is coming into question because now Jimmy's doing what Sammy did. And it's either he admits Sammy was right or he falls in line, which would mean turning on his brother, who initially was his motivation for this. So I think he turns and then he sticks with Roman initially and then realizes that he is too far from what he stood for. His loyalty will be his downfall. It's a very nuanced and detailed story that there are a lot of elements to it that they're not addressing directly. And I really appreciate that because as a fan of media in any way, I love details for me to look into solely on the account that I'm just that interested. That's, to me, is great storytelling when you can tell a story that is at that level on its own. Now, transitioning a little bit over to the women's division on WWE's side of things. Cam, would you mind linking the translation from Twitter here in the chat for me? It would be very helpful, or in the boardroom, whatever would be quickest to get it to me. Because I'm interested in what that had to say in regards to Io Sky and Bayley. They could indeed both qualify for their matches next week. I'm certain only Io is going to qualify. Because they're really thank you very much, Cam. Mundo appreciated. I very much believe that they're going to be okay. Oof. Oh, I see. Oh, it's okay. I'm gonna have to listen. It'll be audio. Oh, I see. Okay. My audio won't pick it up. That's fine. I'm thinking Io Sky is going to be the only one to win, and it's going to continue this story of Bayley is the weak link to damage control. Bayley is the one holding them back, not elevating them. As Bayley is more so using them to elevate her. Part of me thought the story they were telling was Bayley was actually the babyface, but they really started to hint at these underlying this underlying selfishness of Bayley, like bleeding through, which I dig, I like, but Bayley to me has always been a babyface character at her core. I want to see her babyface sooner rather than later. Okay, so let's give this a listen. Oh, okay. Okay, they gave us subtitles. That helps. She's getting way too cocky. I win. Oh, okay. That was not the best translation. I get what you're saying. She'll win the title. Bayley is facing Mia Yim. I think Mia will qualify, honestly. I think Mia will get the win over Bayley, and it'll be much needed. Child. Okay, so Asuka called Io a child. They're definitely building up this feud, and I'm so ready. You know, little children are allowed to be here. Oh, Io just called her a piece of shit on live television. I had no idea. They got so wordy with each other. Piece of shit. Oh, they were just getting back at each other. That's amazing. Yes, y'all do check out the link there posted by our enforcer, Canadian Zebra. There's a very funny interaction between Io Sky and Asuka, and I tell you what, when they teased that match in the build up to War Games last year, I wanted it so bad, and I want it even more now when they pulled that segment, because I was just talking about it over the weekend. I'm like, I hope they go back to that soon. And sure enough, they did. You guys got a piece of shit in Japanese, right? That's what I'm saying. Just you piece of shit, you piece of shit, you piece of shit, you piece of shit. I'm like, oh my goodness. Oh man, calm it down. It was gnarly, but it was pretty interesting. Wins Money in the Bank. I would like Io to win, but the thing about that is that would mean Io's challenging sooner rather than later, and I don't think they want to do that. Or at the very least, I hope they don't want to do that, because ever since Carmella, every single woman's cashed in within 24 hours, either that night or the next night on Raw. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired of that. I'm so tired of that. Let a Miss Money in the Bank exist for a little bit. But the thing is, if Io, who's very much leaning face right now, wins that briefcase, just gonna cash it in and be like, all right, SummerSlam, it's going down, and well, that'd be hype. That's the briefcase once again thrown down the drain, and I want to see someone like a Bayley even win it and carry it around for some time. But again, Bayley won it and then cashed in later that night on Charlotte, who had just won the title off of Becky Lynch. Now, other people who could be in the match that would make that a very interesting situation. Imagine a Sonya Deville, who I actually think is going over Becky next week. I don't think Becky's going to be in the Money in the Bank match because Trish and Zoe Stark will cost her. Which will then lead to Zoe Stark getting cost in her match. But I also think that a fun angle could be to have both Lynch and Stark in the Money in the Bank match and have the feud continue while also being the reason why neither of them win it. So that there's an angle there. But what I'm getting at is I want to see somebody carry around the briefcase for a few months or something like that. But it's harder to do that in the women's division because there's much less depth to the accolades for them to acquire. The men, they have, I can go for the tag titles. I can go for this big card title. I can go for this thing. I can go win the Royal Rumble. I can be in War Games. And the women, maybe it's just because we haven't seen that yet, but it doesn't feel like we can do that. I feel like we haven't seen a case of a Miss Money in the Bank challenging for a title that isn't the one she can cash in on, or a tag team champion Miss Money in the Bank, which I don't think we've even gotten on the men's side. Now that I think about it. Oh wait, no, Miz. I think Miz was 3 champions. I think in 2010 when he was U.S. champ, both tag champs because they were then just, they were the unified tag titles at the time, and then he got the briefcase. He was carrying around all of the things. It was wild, honestly. So it's an interesting situation to say the least. In terms of like whether or not they're just going to have Asuka. Oh, I'm sorry, not Asuka. Io cash in right away on Asuka, or if they're going to actually have someone hold it for a little bit. Like if you have this urge to cash in the very night, oh man, I don't want to put this cursed booking out in the world, even though I feel like I've heard something similar. But like Logan Paul being in the Money in the Bank match, winning and cashing in on Seth Rollins later that night. I hate that. I hope it doesn't happen, but the story is there for it to happen. Another one you could do is like a Drew McIntyre even. Drew McIntyre could win the Money in the Bank match and then just run over Seth after his match later that night and just be walking out the World Heavyweight Champion. Dakota is going to be out for about a year, Austin. It's looking like Dakota, she tore her ACL, I think. It was her ACL or MCL. But she is going to be out indefinitely for some time. And it's unfortunate because her injury looked like it was caused in the same spot as the injury suffered by Liv Morgan. Yeah, Dakota Kai is... She's out. And it's so unfortunate because it feels like every single time she's becoming a prominent character or featured star, she gets put on the shelf. You know, momentum has been so unkind to her and Tegan Nox. Tegan Nox, where's she at? She was brought back to be a Death Girl, and she isn't even that on TV. I feel like I haven't seen her on television in like a month and a half, ever since she was in that random tag team with Natty for a week and a half. The women's division needs sorting on WWE side of things, the more I think about it. And that's kind of saying something, because, I mean, AEW is like, walking apart for the women's division either, but I feel like they're making a continued effort to try and improve on that to some degree. Whereas WWE's kind of just gotten happy with where they're at. Some weeks you barely have 10 minutes on a WWE program. Like Raw last week or the week before, I think had like 7 minutes of women's wrestling on it, the whole program. How do you get 7 minutes for women's in-ring action over a 3-hour program? It's disgusting. You see, and like, we learned with AEW that bringing in another championship, a mid-card championship, isn't going to beget more women's matches on television. It just means that there's going to be more things you aren't going to be doing stuff with. They brought in the TBS title, and my thought was, all right, this means we're going to get a minimum of 2 women's matches on Dynamite each week. We didn't get that. And so it's not like you can be like, oh, bring in a women's television championship, a women's intercontinental title, and you'd get more women on television. I don't think that would be the case. We have women's tag titles that sit over in the corner doing nothing half the time. You eliminated Candice LeRae? Are you referring to the Royal Rumble? I mean, I guess I get where you're coming from, Austin, but I think Damage Control is all 3 of them are fantastic in their own regards, Yeah, Royal Rumble, you see. Yeah, I wouldn't hold a gripe over that. That's gonna happen. People are gonna throw each other out of that match all the time. Both Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox tore their AC. But hey, I mean, that goes to show that he is working. Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox tore their ACL twice in their career. Yeah, that's really rough circumstances when you think about it. Because like an ACL tear, that is a career-risking injury. To suffer it multiple times is a scary thing, especially to constantly, like, at some point you have to wonder if it's worth doing it again, Because I'm not sure about Dakota, but I know for Tegan, it was 1 and 1 for each leg. She didn't re-tear an ACL, thankfully. If she did, I think that would be rough. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Bayley has not held a title in like 3 years now, ever since she was a part of the 2-woman power trip with now Mercedes Moné. But I think that's okay for the time being. She's been doing a lot in really getting Damage Control over as an act. Bayley is very much in the giving back phase of her career. She has been elevated to this plateau, and she is technically descending from that plateau slowly. But on the way down, she's elevating so many more on the way up, you know? Bianca's career rival on the main roster, you'd want to say is like Sasha. No, it's Bayley. You know, damage control. It's what damage control is because Bayley. Yes, Dakota and Io are 2-time women's tag team champions. You know, they're both great stars before that, even in their own right. But more eyes were on them because of Bayley. So she should never be disregarded for how much she does, not just for that act, but for women's wrestling in WWE and in general. You know, and that goes all the way back to the classic match at TakeOver Brooklyn with Sasha, the one that you still hear to this day. Young woman getting into the business saying that that match inspired them to get into wrestling. I get that, Austin, and that's completely fine. You know, some of the greatest people to have ever benefited pro wrestling are people who weren't particularly who weren't overly loved. You know, one name that comes to mind: Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson. Nobody's favorite wrestler is Arn Anderson, and I'm sorry to the Arn Anderson stan that is out there who says, "Hey, but me." Look, Arn Anderson is not the wrestler you put a poster up on your wall, but he's the wrestler that makes sure the next generation is conditioned to properly carry the industry in a way that very few others. You can look at a Dean Malenko in that regard, who might actually be some people's favorite wrestlers. You know, there are a lot of names who have affected pro wrestling behind the scenes much more than they ever have on screen, and that speaks for people who have been nothing more than jobbers on TV, and that speaks for people who have been world champions multiple times over on TV. You see, Bayley since 2013, that's epic. I'm not even entirely certain if she was in NXT in 2013. But, so that's incredible. If you were a fan of her when she was on the Indies, that's epic. But even if it was just when she got into NXT, that's fine. You know, I feel like people don't give enough credence to fans who have only known a performer through one promotion. It's not Shotgun Arn, it's Glock Arn. He ain't out here like this, he out here like this. But I totally get it. So many times I've seen people list the 4 horsewomen of WWE, and on the bottom of that list is Bayley. And that's unfortunate, because I do think that Bayley is given back to the business in ways the other 3 never have. And that's not to undermine how they have, you know. You can look over to Mercedes Moné. She literally just lost a championship match for a title that was made with her in mind, on the fly, because she figured it would have been the right thing to do, you know? Oh, sorry, I get confused when I drink energy. No, you're good, Arden. Austin, you're fine. With Bayley, dang it, there goes my train of thought again. I did that to myself. Oh yeah, like you can look at Becky, and she gives so much. She's giving so much right now, and how much she does to make others look good when she's working with them. You know, you look with Zoe Stark. She's made her look like $1 million every single time she takes her move. She's doing so much in getting Trish over as like a credible top-level threat, despite the fact that Trish is, you know, she's closer to 50 than she is 40, which is saying something. She looks fucking phenomenal. Like, wow. Impressive as all hell on that front. You know, Charlotte, I feel like, is the one that may have given back the least out of the 4. But again, I'm not a part of the industry. I'm not in there. I'm not in that locker room where she is. I don't know who she's talking to, who she's given advice to, who she may have helped through a match, whatever the case may be, you know? I only can speak to what I know, what I don't, not what I don't. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, Charlotte hasn't given back, but it's just, I have not heard about it, Charlotte giving back as much as the other 3. But this isn't me trying to rag on Charlotte. It's more so me trying to bolster Bayley and how much she has given back. I feel like she has given back most out of the 4 horsewomen. And she doesn't have to be anybody's favorite wrestler to do that. Because for all you know, who could end up being your favorite women's wrestler could be who they are because Bayley was who she was. And that's the magic of wrestling. That's why I'm trying to think of a solid example right now, but those who were like Bryan Danielson, my favorite of all time. If you were to tell you who he was most influenced by, I guarantee you, I will probably not be as big a fan of those people as he was. But in his mind, he probably thinks that they are better wrestlers than he ever will be, you know? And that's just kind of the weird dynamic of pro wrestling and the generation transition of pro wrestling and fandom in general. I don't think there's a fifth horsewoman because the phrase has always been four horsemen, not five horsemen. That's not me trying to say Alexa Bliss should not be getting the credit for being a building block of the women's division in her era. She absolutely should be. You know, in a lot of ways, I think she was the Trish Stratus of her era in the late 2010s, leading into the early 2020s. Yes, but I've like the four pillars. I've always disliked when people try to like take that concept and mold it to be like, well, this feels more accurate or this feels this way. Like, those concepts are very set in stone concepts because that's kind of how they were concepted to be. Four pillars is not an interchangeable dynamic. Four horsewomen is not an interchangeable dynamic. They are just those select individuals always and forever. You know, you don't hear about the four pillars of All Japan getting changed out or rotated every 10 years or something like that. Or there was actually this fifth person who was working alongside them that didn't quite get the recognition they deserve, because there will always be that person. But I feel like you can acknowledge the greatness of those individuals outside of that label without trying to impede on that label. You know what I mean? Well, anyways, y'all, I think we have covered quite a lot today. I do apologize for how incredibly scatterbrained I've been. I've had a lot on my mind. A lot went all hectic right there before I went live, so kind of got all mixed up. Things have happened a lot during the stream around me, and I'm really trying to keep my focus going, so I do apologize for how scatterbrained I've been. This is where I feel like I could really benefit from a co-host, and I have been looking into that. So do get the word around if you see any podcasters at my level looking to collaborate or something like that. What do you think is the four pillars? I think the thing is, Austin, that right there is it. It's not up to us to who we think are the four pillars. Objectively, by AEW, what AEW has established is MJF, Sammy Guevara, Jungle Boy, Darby Allin. They are the four pillars of AEW. They are the men four pillars. Now, a lot of people, including Britt herself, will slot Britt in over like an MJF, for example, as the fourth pillar. And I have a hard time disagreeing with that. You know, the whole fifth pillar discussion I just had, if you would apply that in AEW standard, it would be Britt Baker, because she is like the foundational block to the women's division since the inception of AEW. And that there's no denying that. But it's not for us to dispute, was what I'm trying to get at. You know, Britt Baker can still have accomplished what she's accomplished and given to the company in the way she's given to them without necessarily having to impede on the four pillars that have been established and have been named as such. That being said, if you replace Jungle Boy with Britt Baker in that four-way at Double or Nothing, I still think it would have been a fire-ass match. Oh man, what I wouldn't pay to see Britt slap MJF in the lockjaw. I think it will happen one day in AEW history. I think they're going to build to a moment like that, because they've kind of been feuding on social media for like a year plus now. There's always a shot from one to the other. It's interesting. But yes, y'all, that has been my time here. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Do drop a thumbs up if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell to always on for notifications. We're going live a few more times a week nowadays. Starting tomorrow, we're going to begin the WatchaMania My GM Mode playthrough, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. 11 p.m. British Summer Time. It's gonna be myself, Minimal Mino, Canadian Zebra, and Forever Craig. Four-way GMO, baby. We're going to see how it works out for us. And, of course, Dynamite and Rampage at their respective times. Hopefully Rampage doesn't get moved, but if it does, you best believe I'll be watching it live some way or another. And, of course, when Collision starts, we're going live at that. As it stands right now, Gablash is going to be remaining here on Saturdays at this current time slot, but we'll see how that affects Collision streams and such come that time. But until tomorrow, y'all, I've been Avi Devin. Have a good evening, ladies, gents, and non-binary pals of all kind. Peace.